The Appropriations Subcommittee on State and Local Transportation will come to order. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Steele. Representative Slaw. Representative Borton. Here. Representative Robinson. Present. Representative Morgan.
Present.
And Representative Edwards. Here. Madam Chair, you have... Did I miss you? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking. Representative DeSena, you quite appear to be here. So, Madam Chair, you have all members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Representative Borton moves to adopt the minutes of the October 29th meeting. There being no objections, the motion prevails, unanimous consent. Okay, so back in October, keep going. Back in October, we heard from our fiscal clerk, William Hamilton, and the budget was still very fresh, and there was a lot that we still didn't know, how much of the funding would go to our local roads. And that being said, I would like to welcome Clerk Hamilton back to present, to have more insights into the bills that were passed and how they will affect the actual funding as we move forward this year in the transportation budget. So whenever you are ready, thank you, Mr. Hamilton, and let's get started.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I propose today to talk about the October 2025 Transportation Funding Package. And if you remember, that is the 7-bill package that passed the Michigan Legislature on October 3rd, 2025. And I'm going to be speaking specifically about the transportation funding impacts. And then I'm also going to talk a bit about the issue of matching funds. When you have talked to your county road commission or township officials, matching is one of the issues that has come up as part of this funding package. And as I say, I'm going to talk about transportation funding specifically because in part, if you remember, this package, the 7-bill package, affected a whole number of different things. It affected the state general fund, it affected the school aid fund, it affected revenue sharing, it made other changes to tax policy not directly related to transportation. And so when I presented back in October, as Chair Steele mentioned, we were still working out the implications of the package, still thinking through what it actually did. So in November, we published an update. So we've got two things. We had the initial complete analysis of the 7-bill package that's found on the Michigan Legislature website. You can look up any of the bills and find the total analysis. It's 20 pages. It's very thorough. Our legislative analysis people did a great job of analyzing the thing, but it's very detailed. So again, in November, we published and this is on the HFA website, the transportation-related impacts of the funding package. And I'm going to talk about that, and I'm also going to run through part of this through PowerPoint. So some of the information is quite detailed. I would perhaps too detailed for PowerPoint. So I'm going to use PowerPoint. I'm going to refer to the memos. Some folks are better or enjoy reading narrative about fiscal impacts. Not everybody, but many people do. And I've also have a spreadsheet in the package, a color-coded spreadsheet, 2 pages, because some folks may enjoy looking at the numbers, the representation of the thing in numbers. And again, some folks are are visual learners, and we'll start with the PowerPoint. So again, let me just double check. So one quick thing as I run through this. When I testified back in October, we presented the package in terms of the tax implications. We talked about like the 3-column way to look at it. Changes to the motor fuel tax, changes to the Income Tax Act, and the new wholesale marijuana tax. And that is one way to think about it. That's one of the documents talks about it that way. But in the last couple of months, I think the better way to think about it is to think about it as the impact on two separate funds. So the one impact is on the Michigan Transportation Fund, the MTF. And that's the distribution that we model in this flow chart. And so the bill package affects that distribution in two ways. It adds additional revenue at the top from a 20-cent increase in the motor fuel tax. And then it affects revenue here in this middle part by eliminating a current, well, what was current, a $600 million earmark of personal income tax. So there's additional motor fuel tax coming in at the top, but $600 million of income tax going away in the middle. So that's one thing. Again, when you meet with constituents or interest groups, that's one way to think about this. It's a two-fund impact. So again, we're going to talk about the Michigan Transportation Fund as impact number one. Impact number two is a totally new fund creation, the Neighborhood Roads Fund. So two impacts, MTF, Neighborhood Road Fund. And again, before I start, one little bit of background that makes this so unusual. If you go back to all of the different funding packages that have been passed in the 1980s and the 1990s, all of those played out in Section 10 of Act 51, the section that defines the distribution of the Michigan Transportation Fund. So if they added something called the Local Road Fund, you can find the Local Road Fund in this distribution. That played out in Section 10 of Act 51. It affects the MTF. In 1997, there was additional money earmarked for bridges. That played out in Section 10 of Act 51, the MTF. This is the first time, the funding package is the first time where there is created an entirely separate distribution model. It refers back to some of the provisions in Section 10 and some of the other sections, but it is an entirely new fund. So I suspect I'll be disappointing the chair, but I think in the future I won't be able to do a flow chart like this because we'll have two separate distribution models simultaneously. So on that, that's a lot of introduction. I'll make one other quick thing. I'm recovering from a cold, so I may stop periodically to refresh from overly dry mouth. So to start with in the PowerPoint, I'm going to give a high-level view of the enacted budget, and I'm going to reference how, like the interaction between the budget and this road funding, transportation funding package that was just passed. So this is a format I think you're familiar with. Here's the opening slide. The budget, we're going to talk about revenue sources, appropriation areas, transportation funding generally through history, and I'm going to focus on the October 2025 transportation funding package. And the budget, as we know, supports state and local road and bridge programs. That includes construction and preservation of the state trunk line highway system, funding for local road agencies, 83 county road commissions, 531 cities and villages, public transportation programs, capital and operating assistance to approximately 80 public transit agencies, and capital and operating assistance for rail passenger service in Michigan. There is also an aeronautics program that provides capital assistance to public use airports in Michigan. And we've had testimony recently about those airport improvement programs. And it also provides support for administration of the Michigan Department of Transportation. And this is a slide that describes budget terms. We're going to talk about funding sources. Again, this is a lot to look at in a slide, but I'll highlight just a couple things. Gross appropriations. In budgets, we focus on gross appropriations. In this budget, it is $7,889 million. It's round up $7.9 billion. And the two main supports for this budget, in kind of looking down the column, federal revenue, about $2.3 billion, and a little further down, state restricted revenue. and it's restricted in the sense that these are funds either dedicated in the Constitution or in some statute for transportation or transportation programs, as opposed to the general fund. And again, note in this budget, in the 2026 budget, there is no general fund appropriation. And so this is a slide, a table showing this, and we've made it into a pie chart. So you see the large blue part of this pie chart representing the current year budget, approximately $5.4 billion in state restricted revenue, about $2.3 billion in federal aid, and historically, this is approximately the historic ratio, typically 2/3 state restricted and 1/3 federal. And one other thing I'd like you to keep in mind that it took me a while for me to totally understand. In Michigan, so the state restricted, the biggest part of that has always been the Michigan Transportation Fund, which we'll talk about more in a minute. That follows a distribution model. So funds are distributed every month from the MTF to recipients, to the State Trunkline Fund, to the part of it to the Comprehensive Transportation Fund, to road commissions in cities and villages. It's distributed monthly. And in road agencies, MDOT has a website that shows that distribution. If you're a county road commission, like the finance director or the public works director of a city department of public works, you look to that website every month to see what you received last month, what the distribution is, and estimates for upcoming revenue. So we don't do that at the fiscal agency. MDOT updates that every month. So again, MTF is a distribution model. Federal revenue are funds made available. So they're not distributed. It's federal funds reimburse agencies for eligible projects, eligible project expenditures. It is not distributed in the same way as the MTF. So again, state restricted, federal, no GFGP, and a little slice of some other things, local, private, and interdepartmental grants. And so this is a slide, historical appropriations, historic. So the blue line here, this represents state restricted, and again, primarily the Michigan Transportation Fund. And you can see for most of this graph, MTF or state restricted revenue was quite flat. Look from 2007, you can even look further back. It's flat. It begins to increase with the implementation of the November 2015 road funding package. And then the final slide at the very end, 2026, you'll see a big bump, and that represents the impact of the October 2025 funding package. The next is representation of federal aid. You'll see a couple things that jump out. In 2009, there was a bump of federal stimulus dollars. Federal government made transportation funds available to all the states to counteract the impact of the 2008-2009 financial crisis. And again, you see federal aid begin to ramp up with COVID relief funds and the federal aid program we refer to as IJA. I think it's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So that's a representation, a few things at the top. The next slide is really the identical data, but we show it in a different format. And again, you can see the impact over time of state restricted funding packages and federal aid. And again, we're going to quickly talk about appropriation areas. So again, in the current year, it's a $7.9 billion transportation budget, about 84% road and bridge programs, almost $6.7 billion. And again, the largest part of this are funds either distributed or made available to local road agencies. County road commissions and cities and villages, again, part of it goes to the State Trunkline Fund. And in this year, about 11% goes to public transportation programs, $879.3 million, and the slice of aeronautics programs, $330 million. Again, we had testimony, I think, at the last meeting about aeronautics. And then I show the one-time items as its own little slice of the pie down below. So we talked about the different components of the budget, and we talked about state restricted revenue. In this slide, in this pie chart, I'm breaking up state restricted revenue really into two main components. The traditional component, MTF revenue, Michigan Transportation Fund, $4.1 billion. And in this slide, this represents gross MTF revenue before any of the distributions. So this won't necessarily tie into the budget, but it does represent the total that you see on the top of this flow chart that we're all familiar with. The light green on the right, that is entirely new in this budget. This is the new Neighborhood Road Fund that was part of the October 2025 funding package. So we represent this, we estimate this to be a bit over $1 billion. So you see MTF revenue on the left, Neighborhood Road Fund on the right, and some other state restricted sources like the State Aeronautics Fund, fund from driver's license fees to the TEDF, and some auto-related sales tax. So again, we're thinking primarily about the MTF, neighborhood road funds, and we're going to talk about that more in a bit. And I have to say, some of the slides now are text. I'll quickly go over them. It's a little hard to read all the text up on the slide. But what makes up we're going to talk about the Michigan Transportation Fund. So the biggest, there are two main, historically there are two main contributors to the MTF, motor fuel taxes and vehicle registration taxes. And again, these are both constitutionally dedicated to transportation. And the one thing that did change with these two taxes in the October 2025 road funding plan was the increase in the motor fuel tax. It went, we've got a slide a little further down. It went from 31 cents per gallon. There was a 20-cent increase built into the package, plus there's a 1.4% inflation adjustment. So effective January 1st, 2026, the motor fuel tax is now 52.4 cents per gallon. And that generated additional revenue for credit to the MTF, approximately $1 billion. We'll see that in more slides. No impact on a minor impact on registration taxes. We can talk about that later. And there is still a retail excise on marijuana sales. That's been credited to the MTF since I think 2022. The funding package creates a new wholesale tax, so now we have to make sure we're keeping track of the two different marijuana taxes. There's a retail tax, part of which is credited to the MTF. The current estimate now is $109 million, and now there is also a wholesale tax that we'll see in a separate slide. And one last thing that changed with the October 2025 funding package, again, when we talked about this, $600 million of individual income tax that used to be credited to the MTF is now eliminated. So again, a bit more about the MTF. Basically, this restates what we just said. The MTF is a distribution model. The distribution is defined in Section 10 of Act 51. The increase in motor fuel tax would increase MTF revenue by a bit over $1 billion, $1.073 billion on a 12-month basis. But again, how does this impact the 2026 fiscal year? Approximately $715 million will be recognized in 2026. Why is there a difference? Because the motor fuel tax didn't come into effect until January 1st, 3 months into the fiscal year. So we're only recognizing 8/12 of the impact in 2026 because it becomes effective January 1st. It won't be collected until actually March. So there's effectively a 4-month delay in being credited to the MTF. And again, so the net impact on the MTF, the increase in the motor fuel tax, the $600 million of income tax that's being eliminated, that goes away immediately. That is not in the October distribution, November, December. That goes away instantly. So the net change in MTF revenue on a 12-month basis would be an increase of $350.5 million on a 12-month basis, but only $33.7 million in 2025-26. So you may be thinking, that seems low. Most of the impact of the October 2025 transportation funding package plays out in this new fund, the Neighborhood Road Fund. So I've talked a lot about the MTF. Again, this is a lot of narrative that describes the bills. It might be easier to read in the document when you have time, but on the PowerPoint, again, it's a 7-bill package. House Bill 4183 amended the Motor Fuel Tax Act in a way we just talked about. House Bill 4961 amended the Income Tax Act. It eliminated the $600 million credit to the MTF from individual income tax, but it created a new earmark of corporate income tax, $688 million in 2025-26, and again, that's credited to this new fund, the Neighborhood Road Fund. That's established in Senate Bill 578. House Bill 4951 created a brand new act, the Comprehensive Road Funding Act, and that establishes the new Wholesale Marijuana Act, or Marijuana Tax Act, a 24% wholesale marijuana excise tax. And revenue from that tax is credited to the new fund, the Neighborhood Road Fund. Senate Bill 578 amends Act 51 to create the Neighborhood Road Fund and defines the distribution of Neighborhood Road Fund revenue. So those are the major those are the bills that affect transportation taxes and transportation distribution. I also talk a bit about House Bill 4180, 4182. Those affect the sales and use tax. Those exempted sales of motor fuel from the state sales tax. That does not have, those don't, generally speaking, they don't have any direct impact on road funding. On the sales tax, the elimination of the sales tax does have an impact on the auto-related sales tax to the Comprehensive Transportation Fund, but generally speaking, these sales tax bills don't directly affect transportation funding. These are enacted to address a perceived tax policy problem, the fact that Michigan was one of a small number of states to impose both a motor fuel tax and the sales tax on motor fuels. And increasing the motor fuel tax, eliminating the sales tax is sometimes described as a tax swap. And again, part of this narrative here reflects what we just talked about, the motor fuel tax impacts, the income tax impacts, and the impact on the MTF. Again, this is a lot of text. I won't stop here too long. And this slide shows the history of the motor fuel tax. So the motor fuel tax on gasoline, you have to jump in the Wayback Machine, as we used to say. Go back to 1997, the motor fuel tax on gasoline increased to 19 cents in 1997, and that tax was 19 cents a gallon for, 19 years? It increased with the November 2015 road funding package, which also included an inflation adjustment. So as you see, each year going through 2025, one other thing that the 2015 road funding package did, it made the motor fuel tax on diesel the same as that of gasoline, what they call diesel parity. So beginning in 2022, the gasoline, diesel, and alternative fuel taxes are the same, and it ramped up each year with the inflation adjustment, and then you see the big jump January 1st, 2026 to 52.4 cents a gallon. And again, as we talked about, at the same time, sales of motor fuel are no longer subject to the sales tax, so that increase is or little reflected in the pump price. It could be affected at the margins, but not the full 20 cents at all. Then here's a slide. I'm going to be wrapping up this slideshow quickly, and I put this together again fairly quickly. This is the first time I've run through it. I apologize if it's a little jumbled. So these are the two big impacts on this new neighborhood road fund. As I said, it earmarked $688 million of corporate income tax in 2026. It should be noted that earmark comes after a $1.2 billion earmark of corporate income tax to state general fund. So it will come after other deductions or earmarks of state corporate income tax. So to hit the full $688 million for credit to the neighborhood road fund, corporate income tax revenue must be $1.8 billion. And this earmark will increase each year, I believe, by $88 million until it reaches $1.040 billion in 2029-30. So that's one revenue source to the neighborhood road fund, and then the other is what we talked about, a 24% marijuana wholesale marijuana excise tax. And our economist estimated the net revenue as $417 million. It's $420 million gross, less $3 million for administration. And we also estimated the partial year impact in 2025-26 to be $312.8 million. There's some concern about whether that will be credited in 2026, but that is something we'll have to talk to Treasury about, or more likely, that will be part of the governor's budget presentation when the governor in the state budget office present the 2027 budget. They will also make recommendations to adjust 2026. So this marijuana wholesale tax is a bit in flux. And then this, again, it's narrative that shows how the neighborhood road fund will be distributed. $100 million to the local bridge advisory board for the local bridge program, $40 million to the local grade separation fund that will fund rail grade separation projects. After those distributions, $100 million of the $100 million $100 million will be allocated, $35 million to the comprehensive transportation fund, $65 million to a new infrastructure projects authority fund, and then the balance distributed to the traditional road agency recipients. 52% to county road commissions, 28% to city and villages, 20% to the state trunk line fund. So in this respect, when the neighborhood road fund balance gets to the distribution to road agencies, that what we might call the external formula that guides that distribution is different than the MTF distribution. If you remember the MTF distribution, 39.1% to the state trunk line fund, 39.1% to county road commissions, 21.8% to cities and villages. In this case, county road commissions get a bigger share, 52% of the neighborhood road fund to county road commissions, 28% to cities and villages, 20% to the state trunk line fund. So it is a different distribution model, at least with respect to this external formula. I think Representative Borton had a question back in October. I remember things. So once it hits that county road commission bucket, the internal formula that guides that distribution among the 83 county road commission is the same as the MTF distribution. So the external formula to hit the bucket is different. The internal distribution, according to Act 51, is the same to county road commissions and to cities and villages. And that's a lot to run through. I know I've been talking a long time. I'm going to take a quick pause. I don't know if the chair would like questions or if you want me to move to the flow chart. I'll take a quick drink and you can decide how to guide me.
Okay, so, thank you. How much do we pay in federal tax per gallon?
I believe it is, the federal motor fuel tax, I believe, I have a publication off memory, I believe it's 18.4 cents a gallon is the total federal tax. 18.4 cents a gallon.
And then this new tax is 50 cents, so 68 cents per gallon we pay in state and federal tax.
Yes.
Okay.
And the federal tax hasn't changed since I think 1992. It has been 18.4 cents for all that time. The Federal Highway Trust Fund also receives funding. There's an excise tax on like commercial motor vehicles. I think it's 13% of the purchase price. So these big commercial rigs that you see on the expressways, when those are purchased, they pay a significant federal excise tax. And for a number of years, the federal government has also been adding federal general fund to the Federal Highway Trust Fund. So it's no longer funded simply by dedicated transportation tax sources.
Oh, okay, so you talked about going into the flow chart. I think that, I don't know if it's the same flow chart that you and we discussed last week in our office, but this lovely flow chart that actually says how much money actually will go into the neighborhood road fund this year and how much MTF money will go into the fund this year, and that the combination of the two is, I think that what I just wanted to narrow it down to is the new distribution for the road commission is close to a total of 400 million. And the cities and the villages is 220 million. And so I think everybody thought we were going to get close to, billions of dollars into the local roads, and it ended up washing out to really, literally 400 million for counties and 200 million for cities for this year. So that's the flow chart I would want you to show if you have it.
And I apologize, I couldn't translate into like a flow chart form or a PowerPoint, but I did. So we've got effectively like a flow chart here at the back of this document.
Which document?
And I also,
I just wanted to bring attention.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring the committee's attention to that flow chart. So it's memorandum fiscal page 9. Table 2B.
yeah, so exactly. So page 9 shows the impact, our estimated impact of this road funding package. It would be in the second column as you look at this flow chart on the impact on 2026. So again, why we show it both ways. We show a 12-month impact because we think of things on an annual basis. We want to think about the 12-month impact of things. But it also plays out in 2026 on a different basis because, as we talked about, the fuel tax is not effective until January 1st, so it's missing 4 months of the fiscal year impact. The new marijuana excise tax is not, does not take effect until January 1st, and there are questions about when it's actually going to be collected, so that's going to be backloaded. But the loss of the 600 million individual income tax takes effect immediately.
Okay,
so part
so-
of it is a timing difference.
Okay, so I just wanted to just bring the attention to the committee, page 8 and page 9 of this fiscal impact. A is a fiscal year, and B is what we will be distributed this year. And I think that being that we represent villages and cities and counties and townships, that the question that we will be asked is how much money will our neighborhood roads receive this year, moving forward and into the future? And I just have to take your words and put them into
I
people, where you talk to people.
I understand it.
So let me just finish. So when people can go back to their communities, they can take these 2 pages, pages 8 and page 9, and say, okay, county road commissions, you will receive 82 counties an additional $408 million. Is that what I'm reading? Or is it a total of an additional 1.3 billion? That's page 9 this year.
Yes, so in this
Which one is it?
document,
Is
in
it-
this document, we're showing the total road increase of $408.8 million to county road agencies.
Okay, so
So
they'll-
they're the two impacts, relatively minor in column 1, 13.2 million MTF. The biggest bump would be in the new neighborhood road fund, 395.6 million. So the total road program increase to county road commissions, again, these are estimates.
Number is it 408? That just-
408.8.
Okay.
The
So
last-
I just gotta get it clear because I
know
gotta
it-
get it clear in my head, and if I'm the chair and I can't even repeat these numbers, I'm doing no good to my counties. So I can say, because I'm from Oakland County, you will receive a portion based on how big you are of how big you are and how many roads you
Formula.
have and what's your license plate tab and how many cars you have based on a formula that's not shown in here. At the end of the day, 82 counties, we can say the new road fund, you'll receive $408 million extra dollars for a total of $1.3 billion.
Oh, so I will say, wait, one thing to note about the very far right column. Note that shows the 2025 actual distribution. And maybe I shouldn't have included that. I included that just to establish a baseline of what these agencies received last fiscal year. So you can say, so we're estimating county road commissions will receive an additional $408.8 million from this package. And you can say, oh, compared to what? Well, last year, all 83 counties collectively received $1,326.1 million. So the very far right column shows the actual 2025 distribution. That total road fund program increase shows our estimate of the increase in 2026.
So I still don't know if I have my answer because, last year, the counties received $1.3 billion.
Correct. No, that's total. Counties received 1.3 billion.
So the
misheard.
counties last year received 82 counties received 1.3 billion, and this year will roughly receive 1.7 billion.
Yes, you can add the two together.
Okay, so that's what I can say to my counties. You'll receive an additional 408 million for 82 counties.
83 counties.
83,
Unless
thank you.
there's one you want to leave out.
Okay.
but-
And then if I'm in a city or a village, we'll receive an additional 220 million.
Correct. From that
And
road,
then you have to divide that between 513,
531.
31.
Okay,
Okay,
I don't want to be pedantic.
okay, that's my question.
Okay.
Wait, okay, let me go to Representative Robinson, see, and then we'll circle back.
Okay.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Bill. So that's for this year. Moving forward for next year, once this all is set in stone, is it going to be closer to the 1.9 billion?
Correct. It'll be more like the 12-month distribution that I show. It would be on page 8. And I also wanted to point out, I roughed this out back in November. Members should also have this 2-page. This is effectively the same representation, a little more detailed, I think a little easier to follow, color-coded. And so again, showing the 2025 budget, the baseline increase to 2026, and then the impacts of the October 2025 road funding plan. So 2 different ways to look at it. I'm reminded of that expression, if you have one watch, you know what time it is. If you have 2 watches, you never know what time it is. But you can elect to look at either one or both, or contact me if you're confused by either one of them.
Rep Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think that's what we're all trying to kind of get a grasp on, is exactly what amounts our communities expected to get this year. So I guess that's, would you be able to share, at some point, would there be a document written up with what each community is expected to see as an increase for this year and then the years beyond this year?
No. In a word, no. And I say that because we initially attempted to do that back in October. We tried to make a distribution spread. There are too many variables, and we didn't have faith in the document. I didn't have faith in the document. That's number one. And the second thing, the Michigan Department of Transportation has a website that tracks transportation revenue. And again, as I pointed out at the beginning, if you're the finance director of the road commission or the managing director, they know to look at that website, and it's updated every month. And it breaks down by all 83 county road commissions, all 533 or 31 cities and villages. So if you're the finance director, you set a budget for the road commission, but you look at that MDOT website every month to monitor, are we on budget, are we over budget, under budget? So the House Fiscal Agency, we've never attempted to estimate that into the future in the way we do for revenue sharing and school aid payments. It's something we don't have the facility to do, and MDOT just does it as part of their business. That's what they do.
But wouldn't they have, I guess it feels like as legislators, we need to be able to tell our communities, here's roughly what you're expected to receive this year, so that they can plan out what projects they can afford to invest in, and they need to be able to plan out even certainly beyond monthly, but they need to know, roughly we're going to get X million more dollars each year for the next few years, so we can plan out projects and have those conversations with the community.
I totally understand that. Again, if you're the finance director of a road commission or Department of Public Works, you have to set a budget. Often in capital projects, they're doing multi-year planning on a capital infrastructure budget, 3, 4, 5 years. And that's one of the challenges with the package. So I'll say one thing about the Neighborhood Road Fund column. The Michigan Transportation Fund column is easy to estimate. I mean, House Fiscal Agency never estimated that because the Michigan Department of Treasury did, Office of Revenue and Tax Analysis, and there are relatively few variables, and they didn't change much year to year. Motor fuel tax was easy to estimate, vehicle registration tax was easy to estimate, and the $600 million from the individual income tax was $600 million. And even the retail marijuana tax was in a narrow range. So that MTF column was easy to estimate, and road agencies kind of could plan for the future. The Neighborhood Road Fund has two entirely new variables. It's new to transportation. It's a new fund, and the use of corporate income tax in this manner is new, and the wholesale marijuana tax is entirely new. And that's difficult to estimate, and there are timing considerations.
But just to interject, something that you had said in previous meetings is that it's going to be close to 30% is the increase overall that people can bank on, per se. That's a number that was thrown out to us in a previous meeting. Do you find that to be similar as you dissected this more intricately?
Well, based on these, let me just double check. I think that's what we,
So you could say across the board, close to 30% is what we can
based on the preliminary estimates.
budget on.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So that's a number that we could take back is roughly 30% more of what we have gotten in the past. That's, to me, it's, because you only get talking points that are this long when you talk to people. So if you could say roughly 30%, then it answers
And again,
27 pages of what we just
I
have
appreciate
gone through.
that. So I am trying to think of, to leave members with a few things, I mean, I'm going through a lot of detail, but just a few things to keep in mind. Again, if you focus on the two-fund approach, the Michigan Transportation Fund and then the new road fund, MTF, except for the revenue impacts, the MTF distribution doesn't change. It's exactly like it's presented in this 2025 model. The new fund follows a somewhat different model. And that, again, that's one of the challenges. If you look at this, try to noodle out what the neighborhood road fund does in the documents or come back to me. But I think that's the easiest way to try to follow it. The two-fund model, MTF, traditional, the new road fund. And again, with the neighborhood road fund, the revenue is harder to predict.
Rep. Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, it's not complicated, but it is in my head. I can't figure it out. But you mentioned that there is one-time funding. It looks like it's 6%. Does that increase over time, decrease over time? Does it just depend on what we're asking for or what someone is asking for? What are those funds used for, and does it automatically go back into the restricted fund? Like, I'm trying to figure out what exactly does this piece mean?
You'll see that in other budgets. You see appropriation units that represent the ongoing programs, like in the MDARD budget, the food and dairy program or the animal industry program, ongoing programs. And then at the end of the budget, there are some items that have been identified as just one-time funding items that are not built into the funding baseline. So the transportation budget included 4 one-time items. One was a deposit of comprehensive transportation fund of the state aeronautics fund. One was to fund a non-motorized trail program. One was to fund a rail heritage program. And the fourth one, Denise? Oh, one was to make a deposit to a port facility fund. So those used comprehensive transportation funds. It's one time, it's not built into the base. And if MDOT can't expend it, or there's some impediment to expending the funds, they would lapse back. Spending authority would lapse back into the comprehensive transportation fund. The funds wouldn't be expended.
Rep. Morgan had a follow-up.
Okay, maybe a more straightforward answer. On the transit piece, the CTF piece, can you just share what amounts were expected to go into the CTF for transportation, for transit this year versus the next year? So I think it's roughly 160, but can you clarify for me?
So the additional revenue from the whole package?
Yeah.
Yes. So as you see in this,
Bill, I think the key for a lot of us is we don't care where it's coming from. We want to know
No.
the total number.
I'm with you, but I've got to noodle it out myself. I've got to look in my own documents. I've memorized a lot of things, but I don't memorize everything. So in 2026, the CTF would get an additional $70 million from the increase in the motor fuel tax. And that's toward the top of page 9. And it's in tiny, tiny print. Let me find it. But it would, here we go. But it would lose some auto-related sales tax from the loss of sales tax attributable to gasoline sales. It would lose, it's note 3 on the bottom, it would lose, 32.4 million. So it's highlighted the net CTF increase related to the MTF column is 38 million. 38 million. But it also receives additional revenue earmarks in the neighborhood road funding column. It would receive 35 million, it's defined how it's to be used, but 35 million in the neighborhood road fund column and 65 million to the infrastructure projects authority fund. So again, part of me over talking is me talking through to make sure I know what I'm looking at. So from the neighborhood road fund, it's a total of 100 million. This year. This year,
So a total of 130, is that what
yes, 38 million from the changes in the MTF column, plus an additional 100 million to the changes in the neighborhood road funding column. Isn't the two-column approach brilliant?
Next year.
2027, we'll have to wait. I mean, so the State Budget Office of Governor, in not that long, will present the 2027 budget and identify changes that may need to be made in 2026.
Okay, and I have one follow-up, and you guys go, okay. We got to get some lunch before next meeting, but on page 1 of your memorandum, this one,
Yes.
okay, the memorandum at the bottom, you have the use of the last sentence of the last paragraph. You say use of the neighborhood road fund to provide 100% state funding in support of local road system improvements would represent a significant change in state fiscal policy. And the question is, can you explain how allowing for the neighborhood road funds to provide 100% state funding to support local roads provides new flexibility? How will that, how will the new flexibility portion
So
of it?
this ended up becoming a long, so you've got two memos. They look a bit alike, but this is the one dated January 21st, today's date, talking about Act 51 matching requirements. And it ended up being like a small legal brief, but we talk about the fact that the Act 51 limited how much local road agencies could spend of their MTF dollars on certain types of activities, and in particular, on the local road system. So Act 51, back as when first enacted in 1951, even before, told county road commissions, you look at your road system, those of highest importance, that's the county primary system. And what's not of highest importance is the county local road system. And in making the distribution of MTF dollars to county road agencies, they said funding, the priority should be to the county primary system. It limited how much MTF dollars or how much county road agencies could spend on this local road agency or local road system. And you can visualize the difference in the two systems in most counties. In most counties, the primary system, the county primary roads typically run on section lines. They're often 4 lanes. So in Ingham County, Jolly Road, Mount Hope, Hagedorn, Okemos Road, that type of Holt Road, that road system is typically the primary. The local road system in townships, charter townships, are often subdivision streets. In rural townships, they're often low-volume county roads, the county local road system. In short, Act 51 limited how much county road commissions could spend on that local road system as opposed to the primary road system. The Neighborhood Road Fund, Senate Bill 578, allows the use of neighborhood road funds to fund 100% of projects on that local road system. It's not required, it's permissive, but it's a change in fiscal policy.
So I can fix my subdivision, I can use that money to fix my subdivision, and I don't have to use it on Ryan Road or Mound Road or, what's your road? What's your bad one? Washtenaw.
Exactly. Again, that's what will end up happening. That is a negotiation between your township and the road commission for Oakland County, in your case, or Washtenaw County. It's so matching funds are not required, but the road agency can ask for matching funds. So again, I describe in the memo what I think, how that's going to play out.
I just think that it's just, just a talking point again, is that those new neighborhood road fundings do not have to be utilized on primary roads, and they can be used in subdivisions without necessarily having a match.
Correct.
So that's 2 sentences that we can tell our people. Yes, you could go fix those roads. You just have to make sure that the county is on the same page and your township's on the same page as maybe an HOA. So Those are the things that we deal with in district. So, yeah, you,
Only say one quick, so these documents will be on the House Fiscal Agency website. If you have further questions, you know, of course, how to get a hold of me. It's a lot of detail I know to go through this morning or this afternoon.
well, we appreciate it. So, with that, and no further business, and we are excusing, all absent members, and I am calling this meeting adjourned.